To me, movies and car references has always stuck out to me. And just like the first Iron Man movie, the Audi has always captured my attention. And in this video, I'm gonna put even more attention on the Audi Q5 and compare it to the Lexus RX350. Now you might say, why am I comparing these two cars? I have a couple questions about how that makes sense, but I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll know why I did it. I'm Dustin Mason from Performance Lexus in St. Catharines. I make a lot of videos about Lexus and sometimes I compare them with other brands, so make sure you hit like and subscribe if you haven't already. Okay, before we get into the practical comparison part of this video, let's start with the impractical, and that is always styling. So the car beside me is the Q5 2023 with the Technic package, as well as I see an S-Line badge on the side. So this front end, there is a lot of different angles and decorations and things like that. So jumping right into it, I love big grills. I think it's one of the best sort of transitions I've seen in the auto industry, and the Audi does not disappoint me there. It is interesting that we have, it reminds me of the Lexus spindle grille in the sense of these hatchings and these fence-like sort of geometry that a mathematician probably put together. But the interesting thing is we see at the bottom of that grille, it really fade into a solid. Now, when I first started seeing this in the industry, I assumed it was because of the e-trons of the world, as well as the other electric vehicles didn't really have a grille because of the aerodynamics and they didn't need the cooling in the air intakes and stuff like that. So we do see a little bit of both in this world. In actual fact, when you get up close to it, the interesting thing is it really is only the middle three sections here that actually have an air intake or some aero going through it. The bottom is totally solid. The top is solid, but indented a little bit to make it still three-dimensional, where that bottom is like two-dimensional. And then in the actual Audi logo, which is beautiful by the way, we just have a little bit more of that like textured three-dimensional. At the bottom, we do have some air intakes here with an actually very rugged feeling. It's almost like a textured plastic piece. Like usually on the Lexus, it's like a black one, but this is the silver. We have some parking sensors under there as well. And I see a little hidden front-facing camera here for the bird's eye view stuff. But overall, big grille in a few different segments with a little bit of an intake there. On the sides, we have some fog lights. These ones look like they're not on this package, so that's what the fog light would be. Parking sensor, a little bit of that, what's supposed to look like induction, but isn't. And my all-time favorite front bumper feature, which is the jets for your headlights, which if you don't know the point of those, it's to keep those headlights clear from bugs, sand, salt, and dirt, and all that other stuff, so that you can keep seeing that dark road. But also, let's talk about headlights a little more. Look at these daytime running lights. Super unique. I remember seeing an Audi A4 back in the day, back in my childhood days, with the most gorgeous daytime running lights I've ever seen. And it was like for 10 years, it seemed like Audi was the only ones with those gorgeous daytime running light around the headlights. And they've definitely changed a lot since then, where it's not even the same shape as those original ones back in the day, but it still looks really, really sharp. I like that it sort of fades outward it's almost like a tire mark coming from the inside to the outside. Still captures your attention. It's still really sharp. And beneath that, we have a couple very bright LED headlights, and some of them are even adaptive and have the auto high beam features and stuff like that. Let's talk more about the hooded styling. So the thing about Audi, and this particular Audi, is the lines are sharp. Even on the bumper, we see some sharp lines protruding from the center outward. We have some vision lines on the hood that the outer one is a little bit more aggressive, angular, or angrier, I guess you could say. And the inside one is a little more subdued, but still gives the vehicle a really nice flow, both when you're looking at it and when you're looking out of the windshield. Now, just like little Dustin back in the day being so impressed with the daytime running lights, older Dustin, who I am now, is mostly impressed with the sequential. Now, I don't know if you can see it on camera on the headlights as much as the taillights, but it is a sequential four-way or signal system. And I've seen Lexus have that in some other markets, but for some reason it's not in Canada. and I absolutely love it. I think it captures the attention. I see it on motorcycles sometimes. It always makes me look. And Audi, you did a great job with those. Over to the RX350, and I love that the two that I picked are pretty much the same color white. So on the RX, we have the newly redesigned front end, which has a little bit less aggression and a little bit more subtleness. So what I mean by that is we have the spindle grille that's standard on any package now. However, it fades a little bit as it goes to the outsides, as well as has that very dynamic, I'm gonna say, nose piece that some people love it, some people hate it. I think recently I've heard more people say they love it, and it definitely gives you a really good indication that it is an RX, and we've shrunken that big grille that we were so ridiculed about when it first launched back in the day. We have some fog lights and some corning lights in each corner, so those are conveniently placed down there. We have a little bit of hard plastic at the bottom. It's like a softer, sort of more protective plastic. And then as we go up to the headlights, we have the gorgeous daytime running light, and it is very, very sharp and frosted, as well as the four-way that also is in that same light. And I will show you that. Which is always a very also impressive feature of most Lexuses, and especially the RX, is how that front end looks. Very, very classy daytime running lights. And then we have the signal, which comes out of nowhere, and it's sort of in just like this little piece that's floating above that daytime running light. So another really eye-catching bit of the car. And when you think about headlights in general, they're sort of like the eyes of the car. Meaning when you see driving, you're always gonna look at the eyes first, or you should look at the eyes first. And that's why I love that both of these luxury brands do such a great job on those headlights. We have the heated Lexus emblem, not just for show, but also because that's where some of our sensors are located. And of course, our headlight washers, which are also conveniently placed right beside the headlights. Body lines, we have definitely a more aggressive singular line coming from that nose piece and protruding all the way to the back. It gives you a good vision from both inside and outside the RX. And sometimes when I look at this nose, I think that maybe Lexus was on the fence if they were gonna have that extra piece at the top. And that's why they kind of made it look like they might get rid of it or keep it, I don't know. But overall, definitely a bigger front end because the RX is a little bit bigger than the Q5, let's be honest. Okay, so let's round our way to the side profile of the Q5. And I need to tell you a feature that I discovered just a few minutes ago, and I thought I broke the simulation of time and space. And what that simulation in time and space thing is when we parked this car, my videographer, Bhaskar, said, Dustin, all of the Audi symbols on the wheels are perfectly lined up, which is something us car guys are always crazy about. It drives us crazy when the Lexus emblem is upside down, but the car looks great. I had like a moment where I was kind of speechless and I didn't know what I was gonna say. And then I went up to them and I realized it's a floating center cap. Audi, if you're listening, great job. I think that's one of the coolest things. I've seen this obviously in things like the BMW Alpina B7 or the Rolls-Royce Phantom that has like the big one and it's always floating even on the wheel, or sorry, even on the road. But even if this one just does it when you're stopped, that's pretty freaking sick. And great job, Audi. I think that's awesome. But enough about the floating center cap. This is a 19-inch tire and wheel combo with a decent amount of sidewall. It sort of has that multi-spoke turbine look where it looks like even when the wheels, place, it's almost like designed so that it looks like it's trailing or it's moving. Nothing too crazy there. I think it's probably like a 2-piston caliper in behind that. This type of tire would give a really soft ride, so I'm not super surprised that Audi went with that. Interesting body line is I noticed the hood sort of wraps around to that quarter panel. Again, just a design feature, and it also, the hood goes all the way up to where it meets the door. This one is the S-Line, so we have the little S-Line badge there. In terms of height, I'm 6'1". The Q5 sits relatively tall for a vehicle of its class, and that's one of the reasons that I compare it to the RX is I always find the Audi lineup, the Q7 seems bigger than the RX, the Q5 seems a little bit smaller than the RX, but certain comparisons like this, it actually is pretty similar. We have a very defined, I'm gonna say, line going from the back to the front. So this is one line and it has almost an edge to it so that when you're looking at it straight on, you can see it. Where usually with a body line, you have to see it on an angle. And this one you can actually see quite well. The door handles, nothing to write home about there. They do operate a little bit different than I'm used to because it actually moves upward. It's a very Audi thing. For those of you that say Audi, I'm sorry, I say Audi. I don't know if it's a Canadian thing. Let me know in the comments below, but I am saying it. And then we have a little bit of chrome trimmed around the windows. I will say it's not a mirrored chrome finish. It's almost like a brush chrome finish. So maybe that's for scratches or something. I'm not too sure. And then the silver roof rails sort of protruding on that. And the gas cap is on the passenger side. So that's where you put the gas, where a lot of other vehicles is on the driver's side. So definitely something to note. Now comparing it to the Lexus RX350, we have that hood that sort of stops, or it kind of swoops over top of that front fender, but then it stops but way before the door. We have definitely a bigger tire and rim setup. So this is a 21-inch with a Bridgestone on it. And in the sport model, we would have the 6-piston brake calipers, and this one is just the 2. Overall, really good sort of wheel tire combo for both style and for cruising. And then we have the rest of the side profile. So it is a mirrored finish chrome around the rest of, I guess, the windows, the side windows, as well as the mirror cap. This one has, well, all RXs nowadays have the electronic door latch. So it is a little pressure point that you sort of apply pressure to in the inside of that door handle. And then to get out, you just do the same thing, just with your thumb. It's one motion. It's super easy peasy, lemon squeezy, and I love it. I talk about it way too much, and I'm sorry, but I think it's a great invention, not an intervention. Height-wise, it is a little bit taller than the Q5, as you can see, based on me standing beside it. But the width of the two vehicles is pretty much the same. So just a little bit taller on the RX. And then we have, it's one not so defined body line. So it sort of fades in midway through that front door and then swoops up like the end of your signature as you go towards the rear of the vehicle. But my favorite side profile bit is this piece of glass here. This corner glass, which reminds me probably in 2016 when it got redesigned from the old body style. This was one of the first modern swoops, and they've continued it. It looks great, and it definitely signatures such a luxury vehicle from the side. Okay, working our way to the back of the Q5. So the first thing you'll notice is we have an exposed wiper in the middle. Nothing wrong with that. It's useful, nothing wrong with that, absolutely. We have the 4 Audi rings protruding out of the middle of the hatch. And then as we work our way to the bottom, we have exhausts that are exposed, and I love that. It's something you don't see very often anymore. A lot of manufacturers are tucking those exhausts up and away, but we still have them here, although, they're fake exhausts. Because the real exhaust is tucked up and away, and these ones are just for looks. I don't know why they did that. They've been doing that for a couple years now. Could be just aerodynamics, I guess. If you know, let me know in the comments below. Let's look at these taillights though. Audi has done a great job with both the shape and geometry of these taillights, and just for the heck of it, let's look at those sequential blinkers. Absolutely gorgeous. Both the top and the bottom are sequential, and if you've ever been behind one of these Audis in traffic, it definitely will catch your eye. Great job, Audi. I'm super jealous. Please write to Mr. and Mrs. Lexus and have them do the same. Very smooth and quick hatch. I've always liked that about the Q5. And back here, we have a decent amount of room. Right now, we have some cross members that I'm gonna move out of the way. So this would be great for skis and or a kayak, something like that, which is great because the Audi sporty lifestyle is always something that I see. This one has a cargo liner. It's sort of like a hard plastic. We get that in accessory all the time as well as some carpet mats. It's a decent height to load things in and out of. I would say it's a little bit lower than I'm used to, but still good nonetheless. We have some handles to fold down those rear seats, as well as some hooks for our groceries, and it's very well lit, I will say that. So we have these, instead of just a little light bulb shining down into the cabin, we have almost these little LED light strips, which is interesting. The rear seat does fold. I always forget how to say this. Is it 60-20-20, where you can have 60-40, but you can decide on where the 40 is. And we have a little cargo cover which is interesting because it makes it look like the trunk is smaller than it is. But technically, we actually have a decent amount of space back here, especially because the angle is quite vertical and not very angular. So because of that, you can stack a lot of things. And the hatch does seem to open quite large too. I think the shape of it really makes it easy to load stuff in and out of. Okay, so something did just happen that scared the bejeebus out of me. It's a feature that part of me really loves because it happens so quickly and easily. And a part of me, it definitely kind of scared me. So what it is it turns out there's a kick sensor under there that acts very quickly and is very sensitive. So as I was just putting stuff into the trunk, my foot went under that rear hatch and sort of closed it, but it did beep on me. The reason I say I like it is I noticed with the Lexuses, you really have to do it very specifically. Like you really have to like put your right knee in and your right knee out, and it'll work most of the time, but you really have to be methodical with it. Definitely sometimes I've failed where I have stuff in my hand and I like do it wrong, or the car was already unlocked so it's not looking for your foot, where it seems like this one, it's always looking for your foot. So a little scary that I wasn't ready for that, but if I own this car, I'd be used to it and I'm sure it'd be fine. But definitely something to note. Okay, so looking at the back of the RX, it is very sporty. It's probably the best angle that I like on the RX. First thing you'll notice is our rear wiper is actually tucked up nicely underneath. Great for styling, and it's also great to keep it out of those Canadian winters and Northern America winters too. Then we have the taillight that goes from one side all the way to the other, underlining that Lexus LEXUS logo. So very sporty, very plain looking rear end. As we go down, you'll notice we just have a little bit of different colors here. So we have sort of a textured black, a gray, and then almost like a textured gray, all in the same area. And there's no exhaust because it's all tucked up underneath like every brand is doing right now. But overall, very sporty look on the RX350. I've always been a big fan. Once we open up, now the RX does open up smoothly, but it's not as quick as the Q5, I find. And we have a little bit more space here, or so it seems. So it is a wider opening, it seems to be anyway. But it's not gonna be as tall because we have this angle here. So what they found is most people putting stuff in their trunk, they're not stacking it to the ceiling all the time. So having a little bit of styling there isn't really sacrificing a whole lot, especially because the back seat on the RX is so big anyway, we can always put some stuff back there too. But very big footprint, very usable, nice height to load things in and out of. Most of the RXs are gonna have electric switches to fold down those rear seats, but in the entry level models, just like the Audi over there, it is just a manual button. Okay, so sitting inside the Q3, I'm no expert on the different packages and stuff like that, like I am with Lexus, but I will do my best and I'll give you my honest first impressions because today was the first day I actually got to spend some time with this. So number one is the steering wheel. Audi has always made an amazing steering wheel. This one I find is very thin with large openings. So what that means to me is I can see things that are going on behind the steering wheel, and I can tell that the Germans that made this and designed this thing were thinking of details, because even when I'm sitting here straight up, I notice a little sort of divot in the steering wheel that your thumb goes in. But also, maybe it's coincidence, as I'm sitting here, the button for the switch between trip and odometer is perfectly placed in the line of sight as I'm sitting here. So it's perfectly placed that the signal isn't blocking it, and it's perfectly placed that the steering wheel isn't blocking it. And I just think to my first Lexus, which was a 2013 GS350, where when I wanted to change my trip, I almost had to be like, oh my God, where is it? And I had to like look around. This one, they placed it in this little opening in a very methodical spot. So great job, Audi, on that. So the steering wheel is amazing. And I did notice even when you shut the vehicle off, you still have full power to the steering wheel for a few seconds. I like that touch, and it's very light. Now this one being the base Technic, we do have a manual telescoping. None of the RXs and NXs are like that now. They're all power because they have the easy exit feature, but we still have a couple cars in our lineup that are like that. I love the fact that we have a dial for the volume. One of the things about me is I don't like hitting a button to turn down the volume because I'm one of those people that, like, as I get to my destination, I need to turn on the music so that I can see better. Doesn't make any sense, but I can just flick my thumb here and be able to do that. Instead of having to like press, I can just scroll. And same with to the left, we have that controller to really go through some different menu options, and it is a little wheel. Now they don't feel super durable, but they still are good enough. I like them. We have cruise control down on the left. We have our wipers and a few other buttons off to the right, and then of course our signals and park lights and stuff like that off to the left of that. The door panel itself, we have a little bit different textures here. So we have some molded plastic, a little bit of textured aluminum, and the door handle itself is aluminum. Then this one has the brown interior, so we have a brown bezel, and everything is very nicely placed. I noticed the armrest on the center here. So when I first went to open it, I heard a little ratchet happening. And what I realized was, so this is it in its down position, but with that ratchet, you can actually click it up and have it raised, which I think is great, because then when you're driving, you have that armrest raised up and you have 2 fingers on the wheel and you're chilling. It's great. They made this car for chilling. Driving and chilling is what they did. And I think that's really great. None of the Lexuses have that raising adjustable armrest anymore. That's something we got rid of a while ago. So good job there. Open it up. We have a little bit of storage here. 1 USB-C port. At first, when I got in here, I was like, where am I gonna put my phone? I have an iPhone 15 Pro Max. It's big. I tried to put it in this little pen holder here, which actually looks like it might have been originally designed for phones, but it's too big with the case. It doesn't work there. I kind of had it up here, but it was sticking out a little bit. This is like a little change area. It didn't work there. And then I see that we have a wireless charging pad here. And even with my big obnoxious phone, I can put it there. It fits well. It's out of the way. And it's in a spot that as I get out of the vehicle, I'll see it there. So I won't just leave it in a cubby somewhere, which I've been in a boardroom before and had to run all the way down to my car because I left it in like a glove box. Then we have some cup holders, 2 cup holders. I'm very jealous about something here. We have the button to make it, so if you have a hot drink, it'll keep it hot. And if you have a cool drink, it'll keep it cool. I'm so jealous about that. Even though I drink my drinks very quickly, as anybody will tell you, whether it's Gatorade, coffee, or espresso, I drink them quickly, so probably those features wouldn't actually benefit me, but it is a cool flex. I like it. I think that's super cool. Then we have the shifter. So what I notice is when I have the armrest a certain height, I can also just lean on the shifter because it's not super far down and it's padded and it's substantial. So it is something you kind of want to hold on to, or you can just rest your hand on. It sort of reminds me of Vin Diesel in one of the Fast and Furious 4 actually, grabbing that shifter and throwing it into gear. It's kind of like one of those shifters where like when you put it in gear, you really put it in gear, you know what I mean? Instead of, just hitting a button. So great job on that. We do have a sport mode or a shift mode where you can put it in sequential, go up and down, etc., etc. The start stop button is actually sort of on the center console. It's a little bit further down. Again, great spot for you to see. You don't have to look for it. It's there, it's easy to get to. Then we have our drive select buttons, which I'll just fire up so we can go through that. We have the override button for the auto stop start feature. So it's always great for those people that want to override that. Our drive select, traction control off, our parking sensors, our downhill assist mode, and then a button that I haven't figured out what it does yet. The drive select mode, it'll show up. Oh, we got to set up later. Continue as guest. Now we can focus. We can change it from auto to dynamic to individual, which is a customizable mode. Off-road, comfort. So I really like the Audi system for this. I recently got to take an Audi SUV on the track and compare those different drive modes, and it was very noticeable between them. I don't know about the Q5, but the other ones definitely are. We have auto climate control, 3-zone above that. The click is good. It's a nice click. Anything that you touch all the time, they do a really good job at. So this makes a really good click, and it also shows you in a very crisp lettering what the climate control is doing. We have heated seats now. On this package, we don't have cooled seats. So on things like the RX and most of the NXs are standard with cooling seats. This one doesn't have that, so just keep that in mind. And I just realized I forgot to mention the volume knob. So we do have a volume knob. It's a little bit off to the side, but in a great spot still. The screen itself is super easy to use. It's definitely the bonded glass, very crisp. Even the backup camera is really, really sharp. They did a great job with that. The sound system also sounds amazing, and you can customize all that from there. And then we have the digital display in the center. Again, very, very crisp. When it comes to these electronics, the German manufacturers do a great job. The screens, it looks a little cartoonish, like this. I'm seeing the RPM gauge, and it kind of reminds me of a video game. But I can't hate. I think it's doing a great job. Oh, and you can see the map there. So that's another thing, is that when you have your GPS going, you can customize it so you can see where you are on the map in your gauge cluster. And right now it's actually a satellite view of the map on the gauge cluster. So super cool. The pilot in me thinks that's so cool to see everything around you from the sky. Very, very, very well done. And then we just have these little baby paddle shifters. In terms of height, which I know I've been talking about a lot of buttons, I'm 6'1", I have lots of room above me, which is great. My posture, I could adjust a little bit, probably a little bit more like this, but overall it's a very upright vehicle. I would be comfortable in here even for a long drive. And I noticed the sunroof panel is very big too. So you can open that up quite large. It doesn't just like stop halfway, which I do get some feedback about some of the other cars I've reviewed in the past. So let's see how it compares. Okay, so now we're sitting in the RX, and I'm not gonna go over everything in the greatest detail, because if you've seen this channel before, I have done a lot of talking on the RX interior. So I'm just gonna compare it to the Audi. So in here right away, what you notice is now we're seeing the size difference between the two cars. We have this massive dashboard space in front of me, and it's very, very calming if I was someone, especially if I was someone who didn't like small spaces. So on a long drive, if you get car sick, having that empty space in front of you is very, very nice. It's a layered dash, so we have some artisticness, or some architecture, as I should say, to it with that panel that's well lit. It has some Alcantara there as well. In terms of layout, everything is just bigger. So I have a bigger seat, I have a bigger door panel, bigger armrests. The armrest opens from both sides. It's trimmed together in a very modern matte black wood grain. So it is very, very classy. It's not the big shifter from the Audi, it's just the new electronic shifter, which is very, very practical. It just sort of like bounces in and out of gear. Nothing too crazy there. I'm probably not gonna drive with my hand on it, but that's okay. I'm gonna drive just with my arm on the armrest, and it's a big armrest. Cup holders, I don't have the heated and cooled cup holders, but I do have the ones that you can change the size. So you can lower and raise your Yeti and Stanley and still be able to have stability in there. Our wireless charger is in the holder, so that's really great if you're the type to get distracted by your phone, because of every Lexus has the Proactive Driving Assist, which might make you think that the car's driving itself. I don't need to pay attention. You do need to pay attention. And if you want to put your phone away, it'll wirelessly charge in there and you can shut it. Just make sure you remember to grab it before you go up to the boardroom so you don't have to run back down like I did that one time. From there, we also have the optically bonded massive screen in the RX350. It's very sharp and efficient and does all the things the right way with wireless Apple CarPlay, navigation, the whole kit and caboodle. Then we also have heads-up display in most of our packages. So we have the intelligent touch interface here on the steering wheel, and you can customize those buttons to be able to see different things. So we still have a lot of tech going on, and when you take in consideration that heads-up display that's customizable, the MSD display on the center here, and then the big optically bonded glass here, we do have a lot of tech to be able to customize and see different things on. But for the most part, the biggest difference seems to be the layout, the size, and the materials. Definitely vary between the two quite regularly. All right, so sitting in the back of the Q5, love the brown interior, can't get enough of it. I think it's really, really sharp. Size-wise, so I'm 6'1". My head is pretty good. It's probably tickling the side, but with the panel roof, it gives me a lot of extra room when I'm in front of the panel roof. And the panel roof is gorgeous. It is a really big glass piece, so I do feel like I see a lot of sky when I'm back here. We do have this little foldable armrest with some cup holders that sort of pop out of nowhere. So that's really decent. A little small armrest on the actual door itself, but my arms are skinny enough. I don't do nearly enough curls or push-ups, so I could totally be fine with that. I will say the seats are nice and modular, so the headrest in front of me has a layer to it, which is cool. We have a really nice classy net on the back of each seat. Heated seats back here, as well as a little bit of climate control, as we saw from the front. And I was trying to figure out how to turn on, there's these little dome lights, these little map lights, I should say, on each side of the pillar. And I poked it and it didn't turn on. And I was like, oh, maybe it doesn't turn on back here. And then it turned on and then I couldn't get it off. And all it is a swipe. So all you gotta do is actually kind of swipe it. It's like a touch. So it's kind of like use your smartphone finger, I guess. But overall, decent size. Sitting in this back seat definitely seems more like the NX than the RX, but still overall definitely usable. All right, so now I'm sitting in the RX to compare. It is like a big couch back here. It's so funny going from a little bit smaller of a vehicle into a bigger one. My seating position, I have lots of leg room, and it's a higher seat, I find, so my leg is less sort of angular. Very nice backrest. I have the armrest as well, and this one actually has a little cubby as well as the cup holders, which is a little bit different from the Q5. The seats themselves are just bigger, like it feels like I'm on a couch. So even if I didn't need a back seat all the time, it is nice going up in size. I will say, the panel roof on the RX does seem smaller than the Q5. The Q5 really just seemed to let in so much extra light. Height-wise, pretty similar. My head is just tickling a little bit there. The armrests on the door panels are definitely bigger on the RX, which is expected because it's bigger. We have things like sunshades, which I think probably the higher package Audi has as well. Heated and cooled seats, again, probably the higher package Audis have the cooled seats back here as well. Couple USB-Cs. The biggest difference though is the space. It feels massive back here, no claustrophobic whatsoever. I could ride around back here all day, for sure. So a little bit about the powertrain before we end things off here. So both are gonna be powered by turbocharged 4-cylinder engines. The Audi has a few different variations. One of them is very similar horsepower to the 4-cylinder that powers the RX350. I think it's like 267 horse, something like that. Now, in terms of comparison, you might ask yourself, why did I compare these two vehicles when obviously the Q5 is a little bit smaller? Why didn't I compare the NX to it? Well, maybe I will in a future video. But all I know about the Audi lineup is that when I'm selling against it, a lot of times people looking at the RX are also considering the Q5 and also considering the Q7. And people looking at the NX are also considering the Q5 and also considering the Q3 because they sort of stagger the lineups, not only for price, but size, features, technology, specs, stuff like that. So I get asked all the time about RX versus Q5, and I figured why not compare them to actually put them side by side once and for all. So let me know in the comments below what you thought of this video, if you liked the comparison, if there's more comparisons you would like to see in the future, maybe one with the NX and the Q5, I don't know, you let me know. And make sure you hit like and subscribe for more comparisons and Lexus content. I'll see you in the next video.